the next 30 seconds would go on to change the rest of my life. This is my story and how I went from sports to substances to purpose. I actually did this video before, but I realized after I did the video that I forgot to say my name, which is kind of important when you're introducing yourself and your story. So my name is Jack Lyttle and I'm 27 years old. I'm a dad. I'm doing what I love, which is writing. I'm with the people I love, which is my little family. But it wasn't always like that. From the age of 10 to 20, I played so much tennis. 25 hours per week, every week for 10 years. That's a lot. That's a lot of time and effort and dedication. When you put a lot of time, effort, and dedication into something for so long, you would assume that you have some kind of discipline, right? Especially as an athlete, it's very hard to become an athlete or continue as an athlete when you don't have discipline. So discipline was something that I had a lot of, and I had a lot of persistence. And when I got to the age of 18, I was first introduced to drinking alcohol. Now, I'm sure that you're well aware of when you drink alcohol, everything just kind of feels like, and you get this kind of relief, like, you mean I don't have to be like that all the time? I don't have to be disciplined and putting in effort, and I can finally just relax and be myself. And that's what it felt like. It felt like 10 years of discipline, and then finally I had a drink, and it was like, thank goodness. But I got into the drinking quite a bit. And not only did I get into drinking, but I got into smoking weed as well. And because I was at a decent level for tennis, I went from Perth, which is my home in Western Australia. I got a scholarship for tennis at a college in Hawaii. I spent a year and a half in Hawaii and a year in Alabama. Those were the two places I went. I know, very different places. And what I discovered was through this drinking, let's say this party phase, that it really feels like, you have that discipline, and then you drink for the first time. It's like, and you feel like when you're drinking that you're going, because it's all so exciting, it's so fun, and it is in the beginning. And you feel like you're going to the top of this mountain, and you're like, this is the best thing ever. How can there be anything better than this? And then you realize after you keep going and then you keep doing it for some time that you're actually not going to the top of the mountain, you're going to your rock bottom. And that's what happened to me. I was going for this life that looked good rather than this life that felt better. And I guess a lot of us get into this life because we just think it's cool to drink and smoke, and it makes you like cool around others. I remember just being so concerned with what everyone else thought of me. In fact, I was so concerned about what everyone else thought that I wasn't concerned about how I thought about myself. And this went on for a couple of years. And I remember in America, I was first introduced in Hawaii to psychedelics. And when I had psychedelics, if you've ever done them before, and I don't encourage that you do them, if you've ever done them before, you know that they just expand your experience of life, really. That's what they do. And they just make you think differently. And I realized after I had them that there was this whole other layer of life that I wasn't paying attention to. There was this whole other world that was inside of me. But after some time, I knew that psychedelics also, as well as alcohol, weed, were not the answer. I know if you've ever read The Spiritual Teacher, if you've heard of him, Ram Dass, he has this book, and he says that if you keep taking anything, and if you keep taking any substances, you commit yourself to the consistent life of the high and the low, the up and the down. You just keep chasing highs, and then you keep falling down low. But if you've ever lived your life like this, you know that the highs don't last for very long, but the lows are what take up most of your life. So I knew this wasn't what I wanted to do with my life. I didn't want to be taking things in order to feel a certain way. And so I remember coming home from America, and I was lying on my bed, and I was watching hours of YouTube, which was like my routine of what I would do every single night. I just watch hours of YouTube, smoke a bit of weed, and that was it. Fall asleep. I know, not much of a life. But I didn't know that at the time. It's midnight. My phone goes dead. And I realize after my phone goes dead that while I'm watching people who inspire me, like I played a lot of tennis, I was watching so many Roger Federer videos that I'd seen 100,000 times before. Conor McGregor was inspiring me at the moment, so I was watching him as well. And while I was watching people who were inspiring me, I was not inspiring myself. And I didn't realize that the next 30 seconds would go on to change the rest of my life. And what happened was, I look over to my bedside table, And what I see is a pipe to smoke more weed and a pen to write. And I realized in that moment that my destiny, your destiny, is what you do next. And that was such a big breakthrough. That was just the biggest breakthrough I had ever had in my life. It was like what all the spiritual teachers, what all the gurus, what all the philosophers, all the artists, all the movie directors, what they all talk about is the present moment. And that was the first time, I think, that I'd been so present that I really saw what was right in front of me, literally my present. And I realized I had that decision. I realized I could decide what I did next with my life. And it changed everything for me. And so I started writing a lot. And when I say a lot, I mean a lot. Like, I've written a few books, and sometimes people ask me, how can you write the books when you don't have that much time? And it's like, no, you don't understand. Like, when I finish doing whatever I'm doing, I write about it. When I'm talking to someone, I'm thinking about what I'm going to write about what they're saying. When I'm looking at nature, I'm like writing in my head. I'm always writing. That's just what I love to do. And when I do something, I don't know about you, but when I do something, I go deep into it. Just like when I listen to music artists, if there's an artist that I like, I go deep into that artist. I don't just listen to one or two songs. I never dabble. If there's something that I'm interested in and fascinated with, I go deep into it. And so then I started reading a lot of spirituality and a lot of philosophy. And this word spirituality, it never got introduced to me until I was in Alabama, when I was in America. And this was like it definitely was one of the darkest moments of my life. I was in this room with my roommate. He was quite a dark person. If you're ever watching this, I love you. But he was quite a dark person. I remember, because I was in that dark moment too, and I remember he said something that just resonated with me so deeply. You know, when someone says something to you, but you just feel it on a whole nother level? He said that, yeah, you're definitely much more spiritual than me. And no one had ever even mentioned that word. I barely heard the word spiritual or spirituality in my life. But he said, you're definitely much more spiritual than me. So that's why when I got home, I just started reading all these spiritual teachers. I started reading philosophy. And naturally, when you start to change, also the music you listen to changes. Up until then, it had just been like rap and like doo songs. But a lot of it changed. The music I listened to started changing. The books I started listening to changed. The way I started moving my body and thinking started changing. I even put my phone away for 3 months. 3 months. Imagine putting your phone away for 3 months. How much that would, I have this theory that if you just put your phone away for a week, it would completely change your life. And I still believe that. I also started eating a lot cleaner. I started eating, naturally just meat dropped away from my life. I started eating so much. I'm vegan now. I've been vegan 3.5 years. Woohoo! And I realized when I started to think healthier and move healthier and eat healthier, that for that party phase of my life, it was always my addictions were determining my health, until I got addicted to health. And that health doesn't just mean eating. It means what you feed your mind with, what you feed your soul with, the words you speak, the way you treat other people. Everything has a lot more to do with your life than you think. So when I started to go through this spiritual transformation, at the time, I was working at a tennis club. And everyone, naturally, just from my tennis background, I went into a tennis coaching job. But at that time, I had played so much and I'd been exposed to this new life, and I was just so tired of it. It was a great job, don't get me wrong. I love working with the kids. I always gave 100% there, but it just, when you're in a job or you're in a place or you're around people and you just know it's not you anymore. That's what it was like. And everyone told me, tennis coaching is a dream job. It's a dream job. And I realized that that's only if it's your dream. And for me, it was close to the dream. But when you're close to what the dream could be, it seems so far away. It feels so far away. And that's how I felt. I felt so distant to what I wanted to actually be doing, which was writing. I know there's this story about Quentin Tarantino where he's in I hope you know who Quentin Tarantino is. He's a famous movie director, and he was working in a video store for 7 years. And he considered it to be the dream. But then he realized one day that he could go a step further and actually make his own film. And then he started opening to that possibility of, wow, now he has this other dream. He has this bigger dream now, not just working in the video store. And it felt like that. And if you ever get to that stage in your life where you're just almost there, but you're not quite doing it, and I believe that's the sign that life is encouraging you. It's showing you this is not quite it. You know where to go. You know the direction you want to go, and go and pursue it. And it felt like when I was doing this tennis coaching job that I was really, and this was one of the biggest pain points for me, was that I was living the life that my dad wanted me to live. And so I never felt like I was living my own life. My dad and I didn't get along until I was probably age 21. Like, we lived in the same house, under the same roof, barely touched each other for 10 years of our lives. So it was a pretty broken relationship. And so naturally, when you have this, I wouldn't say I despise my dad, but when you have this broken relationship and you don't want to live the life that your parents want you to live, you have this natural push away from all the things that they want you to do. But that's kind of what I needed at the time. And so I left my tennis coaching job. I spent a good year and a bit in solitude. I came away from this party life, came away from my friends. I was even talking a lot less to my family, despite that I was still living in my parents' house. And I know this all sounds like mega depressing, but it wasn't, because I actually started to enjoy being alone, and I started to realize that I had my own direction to go. And for me, it was really exciting. But I know when a change happens like this in your life, like when you want to do something different, but the other people around you are still doing what they've always done, everyone kind of looks at you like you're a little bit lost. But I discovered that actually finding out that you're lost is far better than never knowing that you're lost. So I kept going. So then I left my parents' house and I traveled to the other side of Australia to write poems. And when I say poems, I don't mean that, owl, thy, shall. I mean like really simple, meaningful, penetrating poems. And across the other side of Australia, I bought this 1950s typewriter, which was super cool. And I just went for it every day. And I was loving just writing and being in solitude. I was just completely in my element. And then something unexpected happened. I fell in love. And I didn't want to go there and fall in love. That was not the intention at all. I just wanted to go there, be alone, not talk to anyone, not know anyone, start a new life, not be bothered. That's what I wanted. But I get there. Firstly, I met amazing people, and then I fell in love. And at first, I was really hesitant to fall in love because this was a great woman, and it wasn't a girl. Like all the people I'd liked, or I think I loved only one other girl before that. But everyone up until then had been like just girls that I had liked. But this was a woman, and this was a great woman. She was very strong, very kind, very intelligent, and she was so much more spiritually evolved than anyone that I'd ever met before. That's for sure. And funnily enough, we both weren't looking for love or for anyone when we met. I was really focused on writing, and she was just doing her thing. And so we spent a couple of nights together. We kind of go back and forth. And then I remember I was like, no, I'm sorry. I can't do this anymore. And she was so mature in the relationship. Like she had every reason to punch me in the face because I didn't say it that kindly. Like I was very black and white at the time because I didn't want anyone to be anywhere near me. She could have punched me in the face, but luckily she didn't, because as I said, she was very strong. But I told her no because I was so focused on writing, and I knew that there was something so special, and I felt like if anything or anyone gets in the way, I'm not going to achieve what I want to achieve, which is write for the world. That was the dream. Until one day, I have this epiphany. And please don't laugh at me when I tell you this epiphany, okay? Rather than not fall in love and just write, why don't I write about falling in love? Ding, ding, ding. And then bells went off in my head, and I was like, that's the answer. When you hear the answer and you just know that that's the answer. And then I started writing poems about her. I started giving her poems, and we had this very deep relationship. We stayed in this little cabin, I'm talking very little cabin. And we stayed there with each other for a good 6 to 8 months. When you spend time with someone, I'm sure you've stayed in a room with someone before. When you spend hours and hours each day in a tight room with someone, you either get to absolutely love this person or you cannot wait to never see that person again. And we just completely fell in love with each other on such this deep level. We talked about all our fears and all our dreams, And it was the first person that I just let everything out and I really opened up to. And that's what falling in love feels like. And because it's scary because you're so vulnerable. And I'm a very sensitive and emotionally aware person. And to express my emotions was quite difficult because the only thing I was doing was writing about them. I never voiced them to anyone, but to talk about it was incredible. It just made me realize how strong is a relationship when you can be in such a tight space for hours a day and not get tired of each other. In fact, it goes the complete opposite way. You love each other even more. You want to spend even more time in this tight room. And so the time that usually takes people like 5-10 years to get to know each other, we got to know each other on this deep level in 6 months. Until one night, well, actually, before that one night, I'm sure you know what I'm going to say, but before that one night, a week before that one night, Valentina is her name, by the way, she comes to me and she says, I think I'm pregnant. And I just stand there and I freeze and I'm like, what? Really? You know, I kind of have this shock, but then this ease. And then I'm like, oh goodness. And then I'm thinking, like, what am I going to do? What am I going to tell my parents? What am I going to tell blah, 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 blah. And so then we go into our room and she shows me the test and she's like, but it might not be right though, because I don't know if I did it right. So then she does it again and we realize it was a false test. And I was like, oh, that's good. Thank goodness. But then as the day went on, I was thinking, you know what? I think I was actually kind of ready for that. And then the week later, she comes to me in the exact same position and she says, I'm pregnant. And I remember just feeling this overwhelming love and certainty that everything was just right and everything was going to be okay and that she was going to be the greatest mom, that I'd met the greatest mom for my child and that I was going to be the greatest dad. And I think when you have those moments, I didn't know I was going to do this, but you realize how special life can be, how special your life can be. And this all happened just from, this is just my side of the story. Hers is even crazier, but just from taking a few risks and making a few decisions. And there I was like down in the dumps in Alabama. I was in my room, like no life, watching YouTube, smoking weed and no purpose, drinking, no meaning, no nothing. And it was my rock bottom. And everyone's rock bottom is different, but that was my rock bottom. And to go from that to meeting the love of my life and then finding out I'm going to be a dad was just the most incredible transformation that will probably ever happen in my life. But just recognize that I had no purpose. And then I found my purpose. I loved to be alone. And then I met the love of my life. I had this broken relationship with my dad. And then I became a dad. And those are the transformation that life has to offer you. And it will offer you. If only that you listen to the signs that life is trying to show you. And I know that can sound mystical, but it's true. I'm just finishing up creating a program that will also help you go from this rock bottom of having absolutely nothing going for you and being able to turn your life around, and what the steps were, the decisions that I made, what I had to lose, what I gained, everything in between. I'm creating a program about that for you. So if you're interested in that, stay tuned. Otherwise, thank you for listening to my story. And I just want you to remember that no story is better than yours. I hope this video does wonders for your world. As always, be kind, be caring, be courageous. And I'll see you on the next video. Lots of love.